50% of marriages end in divorce. Of the 50 remaining percent, I know I coach a lot of them, they're not even happy. So the question becomes, how do you not only make marriage work, how do you thrive in marriage? How do you create an amazing marriage? Well, the good news is we have the answer. Take it away.
Look, I think that whatever hand we're dealt with in this lifetime, you can call it soul contract, you can call it many different things. We all have certain struggles. We all have times in our lives or choices that we've made that cause struggles. You and I have had external struggles outside of our marriage, of course, that have brought us to our knees. One thing that I think we have done really, really well is to create a foundation inside of the marriage that is solid. And it has shown our 4 children that we are their foundation. And it has created this when the world is chaotic, I see us in our marriage as an island, right? We come down, we hunker down, we come in and we work on ourselves, we work on our marriage, and then we go out into the world and we are better. And so this podcast today is not about our marriage, although that will come up, but it really is after 26 years of marriage and happy, thriving marriage, alive marriage. It is something that we are very proud of, and God willing, it will last a lifetime. And we want to share what makes that work. You're going to laugh.
Well, it has to last a lifetime because you said if I leave, you're going to kill me. So one way or the other.
So it will last because I'll kill you.
Look, if somebody said to me, teach me how to build a media empire, you came to the wrong guy. This is probably going to get a few likes. And if you asked me how to start a successful and sell a successful cannabis company, I don't know. I was just along for the ride with these other guys who knew what they were doing. If you ask me 1,000 other areas of life, I'm going to tell you I'm kind of schlepping along with you. But let me just say that when it comes to our marriage, I believe we are at the top of the heap. I believe that this is the crowning jewel, at least in my life. And I will die a successful man, regardless of any other area except maybe parenting. If this is, how I'm judged, then I'm ready, because I do believe we have something to share. We've been married for 26 years, and like 24 of them have been the best years of my life.
You're going to say that.
But seriously, it's just so important to be honest. And I don't have false humility here. We've done marriage exceptionally well. So I want to challenge us to share some of the secret sauce of our marriage, because it's one of those beautiful things where it doesn't take away from our marriage to share with you the best of what we have to offer.
Absolutely. And I would say that every marriage is different, obviously, but these things that we're going to talk about today are key ideas that we've come up with that come in, that settle in our marriage. There's you and there's me and then there's we. And the we is where we join. We have always said, we have this nonprofit called Soul Centered. We started our businesses calling it Soul Centered. And when I was thinking about this podcast today, what I always come back to is that, yes, my soul knows you and your soul knows me. But when you center your marriage from soul first and then everything else grows from there, then there is a shared value of we connect here. And sometimes we can't get there, right? But we always come back to the soul. And I would say also you're really not picky. So I enjoy that very much. And I don't think I'm picky either.
I'm extremely picky when it comes to certain things.
Yeah, but not in the marriage.
Well, good. I'll take that.
Yeah.
So there's a Kabbalistic teaching that says there's 3 words. There's Isha, which is the Hebrew word for woman. There's Ish, which is the Hebrew word for man. And then this combination can either go two ways. They both share an aleph and a shin, which makes the word ish, fire, and they don't share. One has a yud and one has a hey. And if you put that together, that means God, Yah. And so the teaching is that a marriage without God is fire. And the teaching is that if you come together in union, you bring divinity to this world, the Yud Hey. And, you don't have to go too deep into that, but that's what you're saying is there has to be something greater at the center than man and woman or two people.
Right.
You can call it whatever you want. You can call it values. You can call it purpose. It doesn't matter what you call it. But if a marriage is just about the flesh and blood of one and the flesh and blood of another, right? It's just human.
Right.
And I do believe that true marriage should be transcendent, which is what I do think is at the center of our marriage.
Absolutely. I think of how we started, right? We don't have to go through our whole marriage, but the reason why we started when we first met was the conversations about God. I remember talking to your sister and your dad and having all these conversations from the book Conversations with God, right, by Neil Donald Walsh. And but that was so refreshing and so exciting to connect with somebody that I loved based on God, based on this shared something in between us. And we went into rabbi world, and you became a rabbi, and we had large congregations, and we had four kids. And a lot of that was beautiful because we had a shared value, which was family and Judaism. Like Judaism and family was the center of it was the center. It wasn't you and I, it was God in the children, God in the collective six of us, and then God in Judaism. It was the rituals. It was Friday night Shabbat. It was Saturday morning you go to synagogue. It was it was the calendar that moved us, like this is what we do in our marriage. And not everybody has to be religious. We no longer are. But for us, as with a young family, for me, at least, it was this shared God. And this is how we expressed God, right? This is how God was expressed in our family. And it's interesting. My mom always talked about her marriage, her second marriage, and she said it was a mature marriage. It was different than her first marriage to my dad. And I think about our, marriages go through lifetimes together. You're lucky if you get that. And there was like a desert period. I mean, literally we moved to Israel, but when we left that version of what was in the middle of our marriage, it was scary. It was unsure footing. We were in a lot of survival. We were just getting by. And we separated on our shared reality of God. I want to pause there to see if you have anything to say before I go on.
This is a public service announcement. All you men out there, just respond, no, keep going. Keep going.
Okay. So throughout, it was like a desert period. And I would say 2 weeks ago, we got out of it. No, I think that our marriage, and I think marriages, if you commit long enough, go through iterations, and you have to come back to that. We have God in between us, within us. But you and I have gone on very different spiritual paths for a long time. And now we're kind of coming back together and figuring out what is God in between our marriage, in our marriage with older kids, with a business and with a different lifestyle. And how does God play that? How do we play that out being 53 instead of 33? And we morphed, right? And so I think it's really important. We all have to grow in marriages, but how does God grow within that marriage? And you're going to have desert feelings, right? Desert moments or years where you're unsure.
I'd say it was more of a decade, but yes.
It was a long time.
So there's a lot there. One of the things I heard you say, one of the secrets to our marriage, but I think to any relationship, is to make room for other. It's so easy to want to hold on to what was, and you start creating a box, container, right? And then you start growing to the size of your container, and it can become threatening when somebody wants to grow beyond the container.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you did, it's your fault, to set this in motion was you said, I called you from Israel.
That's my fault.
Saying, I can't do it anymore. It wasn't just about Israel. I wanted to move to Israel. I couldn't do the rabbi thing anymore. I could feel it was a container that was suffocating me. And to your credit, a lot of courage, also a lot of naivete, because we didn't know what was on the other side of that. You had every reason to hold on to it because it was safe and secure and known and working to some degree. But it was also, I believe, suffocating me, maybe suffocating us. And you said, you're free.
I remember you were a bird in a cage and I freed you. I remember where I was at the corner of my mom's house on the street corner when I freed you.
And I remember where I called from in Israel. And the bottom line, though, is that could have gone a different route of, no, this is the way it is. This is security. This is known. That's the unknown. Ironically, I think we would have ended up divorced if we would have gone the other route. Because I think what we would have done in that moment is said to God or to the universe, I'm choosing fear over faith.
Right.
Because it would have been fearful to stay in a position where that was hurting me, or in a lifestyle that was, I think, hurting our kids, or hurting our marriage even.
Yeah. And I think all of those.
But I think the natural reactive thing would be like, don't change. Let's not change.
Right.
And so I think it took a lot of courage for you to say, I'd rather go into the unknown and find faith in God than to stay here and live without it.
Yeah, I really, I think, what I hear you saying is we had and we have a really strong foundation, but the externals in our lives, the job, the lifestyle, what we're seeing in our children, we can choose this way or we can jump, but we didn't jump without an anchor. Right? Yes. Was it naive? And not every marriage needs to move to the mountains in Israel, right? But every marriage goes through, will I have faith in my partner and mostly God, or will I stay in that box and be safe? And sometimes, yes, the answer is safety, right? You and I have chosen safety in Colorado over jumping quite a bit, a lot. And safety of our children and structure for our children over what we wanted, because we do tend to say faith first. And not everybody works that way, and that's great. But I think what I hear you saying is the reason why we could take that leap of faith was because we had this foundation. We were in rocky grounds, like being inside the rabbi world. That was scarier for me than staying in there, than making Aliyah. So the foundation that you and I have always had, and I think it's essential for a marriage, is, do we have a shared commitment? Can we look at each other and say that we are going to have multiple decisions, hundreds of decisions to make throughout our lifetime, and some of them are going to bring us to our knees. But can we support each other? And we didn't always support each other. And we've gone through those communication issues. But do we have the rock, the God, the foundation, the soul connection to move us through in these difficult times?
Yeah. And I'll say from my perspective, one of the reasons why I do believe we've succeeded is because you have trusted me, believed in me, even when I haven't trusted or believed in myself. And I see this with a lot of men who are with women who don't trust them. And maybe they have good reason to. I'm not saying it's one person's fault or the other, but I see what it does to a man and to a relationship when he's fundamentally not trusted. When it's, oftentimes I'll talk to men whose wives are attacking his character, not his behavior. Mm-hmm. And that is the sign, I think, of a dead marriage or a dying marriage, when it's no longer a fundamental trust in the person, not the circumstances. I've made bad business decisions and pursued, shiny objects. And I'm not to suggest that you should, or you did even trust me pursuing a shiny object. Many times you said that's a distraction, right? But I fundamentally trust that you will find your way back, and that you will see that I, Ariela, am right.
That was a great answer. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, to add to that, I think you need, maybe as a man, you need me to say, Baruch, your decision sucks, but I love you and I trust that you will get there because I know who you are underneath that decision. And for me as a woman, I had to say, I remember sitting on the steps in our home in Lowry in Colorado. My dog was like in between us. He was like protecting mama. And I had this awakening that, this must have been like 8 years ago now, 7. And it was like, I have spent a lot of my 30s and definitely my 40s codependent, survival, recreating patterns in my own marriage that I saw growing up. I was just trying to raise everybody and do right by everybody, and taking care of myself. And I did all the things too. It's not like I denied myself, but it was this like awakening where I realized that I needed to shift this marriage. Right? It was probably the beginning for me of perimenopause too, and I just didn't know it. But it was like my foundation needed to shift so I could hear my voice more than anybody else's. And so I could show you that I trust myself. And some women don't have that issue, right? For me, I trusted you, but I had to trust myself in my decision makings. I've made some really big decisions for our family in the last few years, right? Like I have had to trust my own intuition, my own God guidance. And that has been releasing codependency. Wait, your sister always calls it something.
My sister was on the phone.
No way. See, intuition.
Hey, sister.
Hi. Jesus Christ. You just lost me here. Your sister actually told me it was high functioning codependency. Stop.
Keep going. High functioning codependency.
I am high functioning. A lot of us women are. And I had to realize that I was in high functioning codependency, which means I could do it all. I could do all this for our marriage and for our family, but I was going to hide how I was really feeling. And it was at that point, I remember, that I went country dancing. And I was like, you can come or not, but I'm going. Do you remember that?
I remember country dancing.
Because I was like,
I thought I wanted to
hope
go
you
and
join me.
ask you to join me. No?
No,
Oh.
I started that. I really was like, I need to find myself in this marriage, and I'm going country dancing.
Oh, that's a natural response.
Stop. You're so ridiculous. I was like, I'm going country dancing. And for me, it was like returning to my roots, right? Because I did this in college and I loved it. And it was like, I'm going to find pleasure. I'm going to nourish myself. A lot of women are yes women, and we don't even want to be, but we just are because we're so high functioning codependently. So for me, it was like turning a chapter in our marriage. But what I knew was you and I had the foundation and the commitment and the communication to get through that part, to like help me show up more in this marriage. And like we didn't have that shared ritual of like the Jewish rituals. We had to figure out what was ours, what was yours, what was mine, right? We did a lot of like this. I honestly, until recently, we did a lot of this, even though we were here and together, we did a lot of like, okay, I'm going to go study shamanic energy. I'm going to go study Kabbalah. I'm going to go dive into my ancestral roots. I'm going to create a whole spiritual life and a whole ritual life. And you have to do your own thing. And I just prayed every day that you would join me, that we would find a shared spirituality again. But I knew that we had that foundation.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an additional layer to this, which is it's about having shared whatever you want to talk about, hobbies, interests, passions, values, pursuits, and it's about making room for that we are very different.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're almost yin and yang in some ways.
Yeah.
And so allowing for that, and you've given me a lot more permission over the past few years to just go my own direction.
Yeah.
When we were trying, when we kind of came back to the States and we were trying to figure out who we were from a, counselor, therapist, healer, rabbi perspective, we tried creating this shared thing called Soul Centered, and it was like mush.
It was also like destructive.
It was destructive because we were trying to
be the same.
To take two halves and make one whole.
Right.
Right. As opposed to saying we each got to figure out our wholeness.
Yeah.
And walk that path and trust, have faith that it won't take us away from each other so far that we are now no longer together.
Right.
But enough that we could have the freedom and give each other permission to move freely and pursue whatever we needed to pursue.
Right.
I think it was hard for you for a period of time when I, didn't want and still primarily don't want Judaism at the center. There was a while there where you wanted me to, and then you just said, screw it, I'll just go pursue it myself.
Right.
And you became the rabbi and I'm the rabbi's wife. And I'm happy to be that part.
Yeah.
It's way more comfortable for me than the way it was, or to try and go back to the way it was. But there was tensions in there.
A lot.
And now there's really no tension because I've sort of given you the mantle of leadership in that area.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think it's about 10 years of just rocky. Who are we with older kids? Who are we without a congregation? Who are we without living in Israel? Who are we? Without. It was like a lot of withouts, right? We stripped, but the beautiful thing is like, we also stripped away a lot of like what wasn't essential and came back to what was. So maybe we can talk a little bit about vulnerability and communication, and like how do people communicate and be vulnerable with each other when you're going through it, like you're going through our 10-year desert, right?
Well, part of it is to have attachment to the value or the core, but not the way it's expressed in the world. So for instance, I don't have davening to feel a Jewish prayer anymore. It's not mine. It doesn't speak to me. I went through the motions for far too long. And I let go of it over a 10-year period. And I held on to, though, a commitment to what it's about, which is talking to God, connecting with Source, going beyond. And so that commitment is what we're talking about, committing to the core values, whether it's a marriage or whether it's your relationship with God, not to the outward form. Outward form changes. Physically, we change.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're holding so tight to the form and you're afraid that we're losing the form, that's how marriages fall apart. But if you commit to what's underneath it. So here's a practical example. I am very inspired by plant medicine. Very inspired. To me, it has been a pathway. And I'm not just talking about tripping acid at, fish concerts. I'm talking about like exploring a plant in its permutations, variations of forms, all kinds, and, larger doses and minor doses you don't even notice, as a pathway to connect. And just been exploring that. And I've found a connection with God in the process, and to be able to share that with you. Right. And you don't have the same passion necessarily that I do for it, but we share that same core commitment, which is connection with God. And so if I would have held on to the form, if you would have held on to the form, it looks very different of doing some plant medicine together than going to the high holiday services when I was a rabbi.
Totally.
And it would be a total loss if we measured it but it looks so different and it's so, foreign, but it's not, because it's underneath that we both have been committed to finding our way to God. and supporting each other in that process.
Yeah.
So my point is just really focusing on core values and a little bit less focus on how it's expressed.
What it looks like. I think also, or in addition to what you're saying, because it's so beautiful, is like, and here as a woman talking about high functioning codependency, it's the relationship to something greater than us that we learn to trust in more than each other. Right? So when you're going off into this world and I'm going off into this world, and it feels like we're going off in different routes, I trust that God is my core and that light is my core. That helps me trust in the foundation of the marriage. It's just kind of like transfers over. So what I realized as you were going into all versions of yourself, right? Like that rabbi identity and then having to strip it for literally almost 10 years and feeling that like so many emotions around it. You were going through that and I was sinking deeper into God, right? Into Jewish prayer, into Kabbalah, whatever you want to call it, deep mysticism. And it was like for the first time in our marriage, like this is all beautiful and it's all mine. And then this is yours, whether it's the struggle or whatever it is. But at the core, it's like God comes in there. And then we rely on each other. We love each other, all of that. We're connected. We're attached to each other. But I think what you're saying is like, we're attached to God and then each other. Right? Or like when a mom has kids and she's super attached, like super attached to her kids. Now what I do, I've been doing this for years, is put God in between my kids and I. Because if I show them that much attachment, that's not healthy. But what I've learned is if I put God in between anybody I love so much, then everything is healthier. So I think that, again, you don't have to believe in God, but what is that light between somebody's marriage that you get to grow? It's like feeding a plant, right? Like you grow, you give it light and water and nourishment. And to me, that's what we've done in such radically different ways. And I think now we're coming back to this. I also trust that like, we don't know the divine's plan. We don't know that. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're not going to be a rabbi in this lifetime ever again.
Yeah,
right? And I actually won't ever let you. But we don't know what the divine will bring us in a way, in a path of shared spirituality, right? Just because, like you said, the form changed. So who's to say that the form won't change again? It's already changing in the last month, right? It's starting to change again. So I just love what you said.
So let's hit on a few more sort of key, practical, tangible things because we've kind of gone deep esoteric, which is good. Maybe some things that come to your mind of secret sauce of our marriage. I'm going to give you one of mine. I don't think we talk about this, but I'm sure it resonates. I call it the 99% rule. I see this in failing marriages where nobody stands under the chuppah, the wedding canopy, or on that day and says, I'm mostly in. Like it's almost, I'm in, right? Two young lovers wanting to get married. Nobody's sitting there looking at stats and going 50% of marriages, blah, blah, blah. Like they're all freaking in. Okay. But then stuff happens and we start to get scared and then we pull back just a little bit. I call that the 99% because now I'm not all in. And then the other person feels it over time and they're like, wait a minute. I don't want to be the sucker. 98%. The other person, 7, 6, 5, 4. You just watch this thing. It's like a war of attrition, just slowly dying. Marriages usually don't blow up midair like planes, right? They just wear away. Mm-hmm. And so I call it the 99% rule because it just, when you realize, when I realize I'm doing that, I got to just be 100% all in. That's the faith piece.
Right.
You may not reciprocate it. I can't do it based on what I'm going to get back. That's the reaction. That's circumstance. I can't control that. I've seen you do this many times to me. It's like, I just have to be all in and have faith that no matter what comes from that, it's good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think you're totally right. What I love about you is that your commitment is unwavering, and the way that you show it changes, right? The way that you show that commitment, express that commitment is matures and changes. And the vulnerability that comes from, I think all women want their husband or their person to be vulnerable, right? And so the more you show, like I think the more a man shows his vulnerable side, it's not weakness, it's power. It like helps us stand behind you even more. But if one of us pulls way back, you're right, the other person's like, well, I'm not sure. But it is for us, especially allowing, I think that one of the keys is like, don't go too far away, right? Come back to center, whether that's discussions, but we don't overly discuss either. So there is a part where we can pick apart a marriage. There's probably 1,000 things that you and I could pick apart. Like you leave the smoothie thing, the smoothie.
There we go.
Like you don't wash out your smoothie cup and the blender every single day, every day. It's so annoying. But see, I could find 1,000 things, but but I also know that like that commitment and that vulnerability to share that foundation is the most important thing. So again, we come back to soul.
Well, we come back to values. Yes, soul, but values, right? Because if you don't focus on values, you end up talking about blenders.
Right.
And look, it has its place, but I think as Gottman, somebody once said that it's the 5-to-1 principle, 5 affirmations or praises to 1 criticism.
Right.
And it's a very important point, right? And really, I would say it's more of 5 values to 1 criticism, not just appreciation. Oh, you look pretty today. It's like, let's connect over a value.
Right.
Right. Whatever that is, authenticity, vulnerability, meaning, truth, whatever it might be. And then the criticism's like, okay, well, you know what? She'll learn to overlook my smoothies. So vulnerability for men, I think, is a massive one. Of course, stereotypical, but stereotypes exist for a reason. I think men really have to work on vulnerability for marriages to work. By and large, women have less of a time with that. And by and large, women have to work on accountability, where that is sort of the equivalent of vulnerability to a man.
So explain that.
Jack Nicholson, in As Good as It Gets, says, how do you define a woman? I take a man and I take away reason and accountability. And a lot of truth to that. Doesn't mean you're not smart, but you don't usually want the reasonable answer. You want to connect over the answer. You want to feel the answer, right? We're taking a vacation for Thanksgiving and we're taking a vacation for winter break. And the reasonable thing would be to take one of them. But you have said a value is to bond with my family at almost all costs. So the reasonable thing, that's my nature, is to say, pick one. But you won. So here we are.
I win every year.
But accountability is, now we got to pay for it.
Right.
And I need you to take accountability with me because I naturally take accountability over those things, right? So I got to work on vulnerability. You have to work on accountability. That's partially our relationship. I know it's not every, but I think it does describe a lot of marriages.
I mean, I think it does, but I think that sometimes it's switched, right? Where the male, the husband is more vulnerable or softer or more sensitive, and the spouse, the wife, is stronger and does all the to-do lists. And I mean, you and I share. I think in the center, whether you tend, like a man tends to be more soft, whatever it is, in the center, how do you communicate, right? And you and I have struggled with that. How do we communicate, or how does one communicate when they are in the throes of things? So we talked about like the 5-to-1 ratio, right? That's not a good time to talk about the stupid blender. there's a time to talk about the blender, but that's not a good
Yeah,
time.
it's in front of millions of listeners. That's the perfect time.
I'm hoping this helps it along a little. But when you're in the throes, like, what is your communication style? And so I think it's really important to come into a shared communication that allows both people to be heard. But it's like, I think it's hard in marriages, because I was just talking to somebody, a woman today, that said she shoves it all down because it's easier than expressing herself. And that's the 99% commitment, right? That goes into 98, 97, because we're actually not expressing our truths. And so I think communication is a really big deal, and doing it in a place of understanding how, like, taking the time to understand how you communicate and creating a sense of safety so that we can communicate in a strong but honest way.
So Alison Armstrong, great teacher on men, women differences, says that one of the mistakes a lot of women make is they think that they're just married to a hairy woman, and they're actually married to a different animal, a different thing, a different beast, right? And we aren't the same. So to really see the differences and honor the differences, not as yours is better or mine is better. They're different. And I think we've spent a lot of time over the years butting our heads into that wall.
Yeah.
Because you think I should and I think you should, and we just shit all over each other. And it's failed, as opposed to saying, this is who you are. This is how you're wired. My job is not to change your wiring. It's to get the best out of you. And so I think when you finally gave up on
Trying to change you,
trying to change me, and just acknowledge and accept it, it doesn't mean it's a get out of jail free card. It doesn't mean don't do the work. But we communicate infinitely differently now than we did 20 years ago. And I think in no small measure because you have accepted, and I certainly have accepted, that we are wired differently and communicate differently.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that that's part of the growth of a long-term marriage, is that the shared experiences that you learn about each other and accept each other. And then there are days you don't, obviously. But I mean, I think one thing that you really bring to the table, which does help, is that in the communication, you do use, I mean, sometimes you use too much humor, but humor is really important. I think in these hard conversations that marriages can have, and the difficulties that marriages go through, like, do you have a partner that you can play with? Right? And yes, you and I have different ideas of what fun is sometimes, and we have what's that? We have
Barry Manilow.
Yeah.
Tell them about Barry Manilow.
Should I sing it?
No, but tell them what I do as an act of love for you.
As an act of love, you once a year we go to Vegas, and last year we went to Vegas and we saw Barry Manilow twice, two nights in a row in concert. And see, he's funny. And the twitching starts. But the second night, you joined me and you got up and you danced and you sang and you.
Not true.
Yes,
you can't prove it.
You did it.
There's no record of this
and
anywhere.
you like shook that little lightsaber thing and you sang all the songs because you know them by now. And you bring out like the kid in me, right? And I'd probably definitely bring out the crazy, like, immature part of you as well, because I sing and dance around the house often. But I think that humor and playfulness is an important part of a marriage. And I think that you and I do that really well.
And for me, and sort of another aspect of that is, and I see a lot of marriages withering because of it, is, again, back to the box. This is who she is. This is who he is. I know him. Right. As opposed to, I don't know. Like, this is a dynamic human being, spirit under there that I have to let breathe and reimagine themselves and be whoever it is they need to be, because it's so easy to put each other in a box.
It's true.
And I think that comes down to, I know we have to wrap up, but marriage is a choice. It's not slavery. right? I think the moment you just assume it's, it's the way it is, you take it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And then you stop realizing it's a choice. People always describe to me unconditional love in marriage. I'm like, what the hell marriage are you in?
Mm-hmm.
Unconditional love. So if you sleep with a prostitute and you tell your wife, she's going to be like, well, I love you unconditionally. There are conditions. There's lots of conditions. Conditions aren't bad. And so just remembering for me that you are a dynamic, complex being who's going to reinvent herself or reimagine herself and want to go country dancing as an example. And if I don't go country dancing with you, there's some, thug named Hank who's waiting to, and I better bring my A game. Really.
Basically, that's what I said. Like, join me or I'm just kidding.
Deal with the conditions. But it's an important point, especially after 26 years, a quarter of a century of marriage, right? There has to be room for breathing.
Yeah, I think that's what we've done really well. And it's been hard, but we do allow ourselves to be different iterations of each other. I think for me, we'll go back to like the God thing. Like you're not my source, right? God is my source. And when I remember that, and I remember it every day now, it frees you up, even if you don't know why, from me putting you in a box. And then I love you more. And I think you see that and you trust me more. Right. And so it's this shared, we'll go in conclusion. It's the shared something in between you guys, right? In between a marriage, there is shared values, shared commitment. And ultimately for us, it's the shared idea of God in the center. And then it creates such a beautiful, healthy foundation to grow on.
Well, that's a good place to end. I have a book coming out on male development. You have programs on women's development, maybe a book out of that as well. And someday we'll have to write the book and the program on marital success.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Bye.